And then I started to feel like very constricted. So I got into yoga to stretch. I thought, well, I can kind of kill two birds with one stone, do something spiritual and stretch. And, like probably most people, it was very much an ego-based journey. I really wanted to touch my toes. I really wanted to put my foot behind my head. And so that kind of led me into Ashtanga yoga,
Hmm.
which is a very rigorous style of yoga, practicing yoga postures. And but one of the things that happened very quickly at the beginning of that journey is I really hurt myself. I started to hurt my back. And all the yoga teachers that I came across, I would tell them, oh, I've got back issues. I started to identify as someone who had back issues. And all of them would say things like, oh, you need to open your lower back. You need to open your hamstrings. I mean, I look back at that. Well, that's a whole other discussion, but
Mm.
they would use that kind of language that doesn't really mean anything. But at that time, I thought, okay, now I have to become more flexible. I have to stretch more. And so I did, but then I would hurt myself more and more to the point where, just kind of bending over to pick up a drop pair of keys, for example, I would hurt my back. I would throw my back out. My back would seize up. Just doing simple tasks would all of a sudden tweak something. So that's on one side of the story. The other side of the story is that I got really serious by the time I turned 28 in yoga. I moved to New York. I started a yoga practice there. That led me to opening up a yoga studio, um, and which is a whole story in and of itself. And then I met my business partner, and we decided to open up a yoga retreat in Costa Rica. So we officially opened the retreat in January of 2010, and that's where I'm based now. My story kind of culminated by the time I turned 45. I ended up in a surgeon's office, an orthopedic surgeon's office. I was in so much pain. I, I mean, we talk about, there's different levels of pain. This pain was so debilitating that I could barely walk. I remember when I made that final journey into the hospital that I was going to have a procedure done where they put injected
Hmm.
anti-inflammatories into my spine because it was so inflamed. I just couldn't walk. And I remember it took me like a long time just to take these, little baby steps to the emergency room. But he said to me that you will probably need a spinal fusion in your lower back. You are a perfect candidate for this. And that really was sort of a wake up call for me on so many levels because here I was, the great yoga teacher. I knew so much about the body, or at least I thought I did. And, international yoga teacher. And here I was at 45, completely the antithesis of what I was preaching, what I was talking to people about, attributing the marvelous effects of stretching and doing yoga. And that was kind of like a moment for me to go, okay, I don't really know as much as I thought I did. So I need to learn more. And that journey took me into understanding biomechanics, muscle function, understanding the basic principles of muscle function, and understanding like we need to get the muscles doing what they're supposed to do, and stretching is doing the complete opposite of what they're supposed to do.
Mm.
And that's kind of led me to the journey of where I am right now speaking to you.
Cool. So, how long was it between the time you started practicing yoga to the point when you started to feel pain?
Right away, I remember when shortly after I started quote unquote stretching yoga, because I just want to just kind of reorient or state something that I am a real big believer, if you want to use that word, in yoga, the philosophy, the practice. What I don't agree with is the stretching part of it, but that's a whole other conversation. So I just kind of, when I say sometimes yoga, it's interchangeable with stretching at
Hmm.
that period of my life. And so when I started doing the stretching yoga, I remember one day it was moving my body. I was doing some, moving things around. And all of a sudden, my back seized up on me. And it was like 18 at the time. And it was just like a moment where I felt like, oh my God, I'm 18 and now I'm old. Because, when your back seizes up, you could have such limited mobility. I didn't
Hmm.
understand why that was happening. And of course, the solution was to go and stretch more, which was not the right thing to do. So I was 18, like right away it happened.
So you say it was you were 45 at the time you were sat with the surgeon.
Yeah.
So did you struggle with pain from age 18 to 45, or did you have kind of like good times and bad times?
I would say that in the earlier years, I didn't struggle with pain as much. I always had lower back problems though. And I just kind of attributed it to, oh, I need to stretch more. Nobody said to me, you've got back problems because your muscles aren't working properly down there, and then showed me how to do that. Nobody ever taught me what proper muscle function is. And I kind of want to just state something that when I say nobody, I'm also including people in the fitness industry. And I find that there's also equal amounts of ignorance in the fitness industry as there is in the yoga quote unquote industry as well. And I had, because I had personal trainers, I worked with a lot of people. I've invested my whole life into understanding my body, understanding biomechanics, understanding how can it, because I've always known that I would live a long time. And I think that's kind of a truism for most people in the Western world. We're going to live a long time. And so, how do we want to live? And I've always tried to take care of myself so that way I could always have a functional body as I've
Hmm.
gotten older.